Welcome back. Continuing our conversation now with Politico's campaigns editor, Steve Shepard. Hey, Steve. So, people are wondering, is there an identity crisis within the Republican Party now? Because Republican leaders are sort of grappling with the prospect that maybe their best chance of stopping Donald Trump's eventual march to the Republican convention and the nomination may be with Ted Cruz, but that is not their pick either.
Right. In any other year, Ted Cruz would have been the outsider candidate. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has, to a large degree, hijacked the entire process here, basically based on his whims. Whatever he's thinking of saying on a particular day drives so much of the conversation, the other candidates are forced to react to it. It is interesting, though, that the top two candidates right now, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, are such outsiders, have been so critical of the Republican establishment. I think it does speak to the fact that, roughly 60% or two-thirds of Republican primary voters, the people who were involved in this process, are really disgusted with Republican establishment, an establishment they think that has overpromised what they can do, particularly with Barack Obama in office, a reaction to the fact that Barack Obama got reelected despite Mitt Romney's campaign. You've seen Donald Trump in the past week say, why should I take advice from Mitt Romney? He lost what a campaign we should have won. Mm-hmm. Demographically, when you look at the 2012 election, it's not really a campaign Mitt Romney should have won. Incumbents have an advantage, like Barack Obama did. Demographically, it's difficult for Republicans right now to win presidential national elections the way the map's set up. That said, a lot of Republicans think that Barack Obama's been such a failure that they should have won, and that they didn't is another sign that they need to buck the Republican establishment here in this race by choosing one of the outsider candidates.
So who are these voters that Trump is appealing to? Are they Republicans? Trump says he's bringing new people to the table. Is he?
I think to some degree. Look, turnout has surged in basically every state thus far. You're seeing close, if not record turnout, then close to record turnout in this process. You're seeing record 15 million people watching some of these televised primary debates, despite the fact there have been 11 of them, and people are still tuning in. It's really quite striking. I think ultimately what you have here coming up are some states where it is closed to only registered Republicans to participate, including the District of Columbia, which will have its convention this Saturday. You have to have been a registered Republican for that convention, for example, as of February 29th, in order to attend and vote in the primary. You're going to see that in a number of other states, too, that are closed to independents. Does Donald Trump do as well in those states when it's just the people who are already registered Republicans? That's going to be a big question, I think, moving forward. I think he needs to expand his appeal a little bit in order to gain the steam necessary to win a majority of the delegates going into the convention.
All right, well, how will he expand his appeal? When you mentioned that he sort of speaks off the cuff, and sometimes what he says, it makes other people shudder to think that actually came out of his mouth. He has turned off a lot of voters, minority voters for sure, with his divisive rhetoric. If he were to go to the convention and become the nominee of the Republican Party, how would he make that turn in what he says and how he comes across looking at the general election?
Well, I think Donald Trump is a salesman and a showman first, more than a ideologue or someone who's really wedded to some of the positions that he's taken so far in this primary. I think you saw that a little bit last week in the debate, where he sort of said on visas, I've moved off that position a little bit, or you have to be flexible. This is the opening stage in a negotiation. He views a lot of this process in terms of a negotiation, like a business deal. And I think that he would pivot to the center, perhaps definitely more so than Ted Cruz, who has portrayed himself as the most rigid conservative in the race. Donald Trump would be more likely to try to pivot to the center. Now, that will be difficult to do. Democrats will certainly hang a lot of the things that Donald Trump has said, both in terms of policy positions and some of his sort of more off-the-cuff remarks. They will definitely try to hang those around his neck like an anvil and try to take him down in the general election and prevent him from moving to the center in image during that kind of campaign.
Have you heard any names tossed about who might actually run with him on the ticket if he were to get the nomination?
I think, Donald Trump is an unpredictable person. I think he would look to make a big splash. It's one of the things we've seen. Every time this race starts to turn against him a little bit, he goes even further to try to get headlines, try to dominate the news coverage. I think he'd look at his selection of a running mate to try to do that. Obviously, he's been endorsed by some political figures, like Chris Christie. I think, though, he would probably look at a Chris Christie running mate announcement wouldn't be that unexpected, wouldn't be a surprise, wouldn't generate the kind of splash that I think Donald Trump would look for.
And you got two Northeasters too, right?
Right, we're a long way from that kind of speculation, but knowing what you know about Donald Trump and how he's run this campaign thus far, I expect it to be somebody out of the box. I expect it to be somebody unexpected.
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 When you say unexpected, are you saying non-establishment?
I'm saying non-establishment. I'm saying big name. I'm saying
somebody from the world of reality TV, like him.
You never know. He's going to want somebody who can go on the stump and perform the way he does, so that when he's in Ohio, this person can be in Wisconsin. Just as effective as he is. He's going to want somebody who's going to make a huge splash at the convention. Again, July is a long way away.
It is a long way off.
But one thing we know about Donald Trump, he loves headlines. And would Chris Christie, someone who's already been out there for him, generate those kind of headlines? I'm a little skeptical. I think he'd want to go bigger.
Yeah.
No pun intended on Chris Christie, of course.
Absolutely not. So, the other issue is other elections, like the Senate elections in the fall. Senators from, say, purple states, how are they going to be aligning themselves with a possible Trump as the nominee?
Well, there are two schools of thought here. One, that you create some distance. Now, Donald Trump may help you, especially a lot of these purple states. I'm thinking of Rob Portman, Republican senator in Ohio, Pat Toomey, Republican senator in Pennsylvania, Ron Johnson, Republican senator in Wisconsin, Mark Kirk, Republican senator in Illinois, all face tough re-election campaigns, all running in states, particularly in Wisconsin and in Ohio and Pennsylvania, with large working-class white electorates that might respond well to Donald Trump. That said, they don't want to turn off too many voters, and so they could have sort of a tenuous create opportunities to create some distance, but hope that Donald Trump drives turnout to a degree that they can eke out. If Donald Trump can get to 46% of the vote, they can eke out the other 4% by using some strategic opportunities to create some distance with him. In some ways, that'll be easier to do than with Ted Cruz, who's more ideologically rigid and probably wouldn't move to the center in the same way Donald Trump would.
We've got a minute left, and I want to ask you about the passing of Nancy Reagan. She's been being remembered a number of ways for the great love that she shared with her husband, for being sort of a style icon in the White House, and of course for her crusade against many different issues, including substance abuse among teenagers. And she started the Just Say No campaign. Will her passing have much of an effect on the presidential election, do you think?
That's an interesting question. The answer is I don't know. You go back to September, the Reagan Library debate, you saw the reverence that Republicans still have for Ronald Reagan. And I think that temporarily, at least with Ted Cruz and with John Kasich and with Marco Rubio, you would probably see them move to a more decorous kind of campaign style. Things have gotten very, very ugly, very chippy. I think they'd move off of that. The wild card here, of course, is Donald Trump, who, if you just peruse Donald Trump's Twitter feed yesterday, you saw one tweet mourning the passing of Nancy Reagan, and then he quickly pivoted to attacking his rivals again. I think he might pay lip service to this and then go back to the kind of campaign he's been running. And the other candidates, because Donald Trump is leading thus far, are going to be forced to react to that.
Things were different in the 80s, right? More elegant and maybe a bit more polite?
More elegant, more polite, but Ronald Reagan, of course, I mean, he had been governor of California, but he was a celebrity candidate to some degree, and that's kind of what we're seeing now.
It's true. There are some parallels there. Well, it's always good to talk to you. Steve Shepard, Politico's campaigns editor, thanks so much for joining us today with all your thoughts.
You're very welcome.
See you next time.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll be back with more in a minute.